I know you spoke about this subject matter at length yesterday, and I appreciate you taking the time to do so today. When you heard Willie Mays had passed away, your first blush thought was what, Bob?
Well, no surprise. We knew it was coming shortly when we heard that he couldn't come to Rickwood Field for the game tonight, which is a tribute to the Negro Leagues, but also designed as a tribute to him as baseball's greatest living player at the time. And it's both poignant and, in a sense, poetic that he would pass away right in the midst of this celebration of a part of his personal history, because he played for the Birmingham Black Barons in the Negro Leagues as a 17-year-old kid in 1948. So it wasn't a surprise. And I think the overwhelming sentiment is just great appreciation for his place in baseball history, which actually transcends that to the point where I don't think it's an overstatement to say that he was, for a very long time, a national treasure. And maybe younger fans, and you could be middle-aged and never have seen him play in person or even on television in a live situation, maybe those fans who weren't really students of baseball history are gaining a better appreciation in the last few days with all the tributes to him of just how important he is in baseball history and just how incredibly great he was as an all-around player, but also as a showman, as a true stylist. You know, the sports world is, in my view, blighted these days by exhibitionists who don't understand what true style is. But the Willie Mayses, the Sandy Koufaxes, the Roberto Clementes, the Dr. J's and others, they had tremendous magnetism and style without a thimble's worth of exhibitionism. Everything Willie Mays did, not just the spectacular stuff, and there was plenty of spectacular stuff, but everything he did, even the way he fielded a routine fly ball and tossed the ball back into the infield, the way he trotted down to first base after a walk, everything about him exuded style and made you love baseball more than you might have before you heard of Willie Mays.
And I know, again, your guy was Mickey Mantle, and that's famously known. And Willie Mays, I'd love to give you the floor on a little bit more as to what made him so great. We know his numbers, and we also know, he was the first recipient of the Commissioner's Award, which is now named after Roberto Clemente. So a great human as well. But why, for those, as you point out, I'm in that middle-aged group that never saw him. Why was he so great? And
he was just electrifying. And I think it was his first big league manager, Leo DeRocher, who actually coined the term five-tool play. I mean, the thought existed prior to that, but I think Leo was the first one to verbalize it that way. What are the five things that a position player can do? Run, field, throw, hit for average, hit for power. Willie Mays is a five-tool player, and he certainly was at the highest level of all those five aspects of being a great baseball player. And then on top of it, he was just so much fun to watch. He was just so charismatic, and he had a long career, as did his greatest contemporary, Hank Aaron. And here's a point I made in a few other places over the last couple of days, something that really makes you, that I appreciate about the era of baseball when I was a kid and the one that preceded it. But I got to know Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio and Stan Musial, and there's Willie and Mickey, two-thirds of the song that became popular some 3 years ago, Willie, Mickey, and the Duke, about the three center fielders in New York during the 1950s. You know, we're obsessed with rankings, and statistics help us with those rankings. But none of the great players of the 30s and 40s, 50s and 60s, maybe into the early 70s in the case of Aaron especially, their greatness, none of the greatness of any of them dims or diminishes the greatness of any of the others. You know, Ted Williams statistically was slightly better than Stan Musial, as incredible as Musial's numbers were, but Ted was the splendid splinter in Baltimore. Stan was Stan the Man in St. Louis. They're each great, they're contemporaries, they're distinctive. And DiMaggio, despite all the comparisons to Williams, DiMaggio is distinctive too, because he played center field, because of the way he carried himself. He's got the 56 games, same season, and Williams has the last man to hit 400. The three of them together are all great, but they're distinctly different. And if you looked at them only from the standpoint of, well, they're different only by degree, no, they're distinctively different. And the game would be poorer if you had two guys that were exactly like Ted Williams or two that were exactly like Joe DiMaggio. It's better that there were all those three players who were great in their own way and were received and celebrated differently because of where they played and other aspects of their personality and their biographies. Same thing true with Hank Aaron and Willie Mays. You can say, I think it's credible, Willie was the greatest all-around player. But Hank was probably a slightly better hitter than Willie. And then Hank becomes a civil rights hero because of what he faced and the dignity and decency with which he triumphed over it and faced it, the way he carried himself. So to many people, Hank will always be the authentic home run king. And then it's not a contradiction to say that Willie was the greatest all-around player. And Mickey Mantle, who I knew well toward the end of his life, it really bothered him that he felt he didn't fulfill his potential. His biography is as much about what might have been as what was. But that star-crossed aspect of his story makes him distinct. He might be the guy that most closely resembles the Roy Hobbs character in Bernard Malamud's novel and in the film that was made, Barry Levinson made, with starring Robert Redford, about The Natural. You know, it bothered Mickey Mantle a great deal that he played a few years too long and his lifetime batting average progressively went from 309 down to 298 because 300 meant something different back in the day. Analytics now poo-poo batting average, but it mattered to Mickey. But in the big picture, he still lives in people's imagination in a different way that Willie does, in a different way than Hank Aaron does. They're all distinctively great. The game would be much poorer without them. But if forced to decide which one was the greatest all-around player, I think the overwhelming consensus now is the answer to that is Willie Mays.
Bob Costas here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.